On our newscast tonight, during yesterday's talks over the resumption of family reunions, North Korea didn't make much of a fuss about Seoul's upcoming military drills with the U.S. But they got right back to it today, calling once again for the exercises to be canceled. It's day one of a four-day interpellation session where rival political parties debate the merits of a system in which political parties nominate candidates for local elections. Sports. Athletes from around the world have assembled in Sochi for the first major global sporting event of 2014. We have the rundown of what to expect, including the favorites and the possible dark horses. Stay with us for these stories and more.
It is 1 p.m. in Sochi, 5 in Tacloban City, and 6 on a Thursday evening here in Seoul. Welcome to Early Edition at 6. I'm Moon Gon-young.
And I'm Daniel Cha. Thank you for joining us.
Now, could the much-anticipated reunions for families separated since the Korean War be in jeopardy? North Korea has once again called on the South to halt its upcoming joint military drills with the United States.
And this comes just one day after the two Koreas agreed to hold a humanitarian event in the third week of February. For more, we have our Unification Ministry correspondent Hwang Sung-hee on the line. So, Sung-hee, what can you tell us at this moment?
Good evening, Daniel, Gonyang. North Korea's powerful National Defense Commission has released a statement urging the cancellation of the upcoming joint military drills between South Korea and the United States. The statement said that acts of reconciliation and provocation, such as holding talks and practicing for a war, cannot coexist, and called on the South to drop its confrontational stance and carry out policies that can live up to the expectations of its people. Now, this comes just a day after the two Koreas agreed to hold the long-suspended family reunions from February 20th to the 25th. The dates will most likely overlap with the key resolve exercises, which usually begin in the last week of February. Seoul's Defense Ministry said the drills will not be affected by the reunions and take place as planned. South Korean Unification Minister Lee Gil-jae also said the North must stick to the agreement it made yesterday to build trust between the two Koreas.
Now, Sung-hee, we're also getting reports that officials in charge of the Inter-Korean Red Cross hotline at the truce village of Panmunjom are working overtime.
That's right, Ganyang. The hotline is usually open until 4 p.m. Korea time, but Seoul's Unification Ministry said that the North has asked to extend the working hours for today. Now, what's at issue is a planned trip tomorrow by a team of South Korean engineers to the reunion site in the North. South Korea sent a list of around 50 officials earlier this afternoon, but the North said the list will most likely be confirmed after 4 p.m., which is the usual closing time of the hotline. An official at the Unification Ministry said, however, that the extended working hour does not seem to be related to the statement released by North Korea today. But we do have to remember that North Korea does have a history of breaking promises, including its last-minute cancellation of a round of family reunions just last year. Back to you.
Predictable in its unpredictable ways. That was our Hwang Sung-hee reporting on North Korea's call for a halt to the upcoming joint military drills between Seoul and Washington.
Meanwhile, President Park Geun-hye is kicking off her second year in office with a series of status reports from government ministries this week.
The four security ministries were in the hot seat today, giving their first collaborative report in 4 years. As our Park Ji-won reports, North Korea took center stage in their policy reports.
At the Defense Ministry in central Seoul on Thursday, the Foreign, Unification and Defense Ministries and the Ministry of Patriots and Veterans Affairs briefed the president on their annual policy goals and plans for the year. The Foreign Ministry said it will take a principled and effective two-track approach to denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. Against a backdrop of increased insecurity in inter-Korean relations, the ministry said it would improve bilateral cooperation with neighboring countries such as China and Russia and its traditional ally, the United States, while using multilateral pressure to engage with North Korea. This is part of the Foreign Ministry's three main policy goals of building a sustainable peace on the peninsula, inducing change in North Korea, and securing global support for reunification. The Unification Ministry says it will aim to create sustainable inner Korean policies through dialogue and a variety of cooperative projects, and to lay the groundwork for reunification with the North. In its three-pronged strategy, the ministry said it will work toward building a sustainable peace, carry out the president's policy of trust politique, and make mid- and long-term plans for the reunification of the two Koreas. One part of the strategy involves building a peace park in the DMZ between North and South Korea. The Defense Ministry vowed to strengthen its ability to react to nuclear threats and prepare for the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S. to Korea. This is the first time in 4 years that the security-related ministries came together to give a status report to the president. Government officials say the joint briefing shows the government is concentrating its efforts on coordinated foreign and security policies. Park Ji-won, Arirang News.
And as our Park Ji-won just briefly mentioned, the South Korean government has decided to forge ahead with a number of projects that, if realized, would bolster economic ties with Pyongyang. The list includes President Park Geun-hye's proposal to build a peace park on the heavily fortified border dividing the two Koreas and helping out businesses that promote cultural exchanges between Seoul and Pyongyang. Our UDN has the details.
Seoul will aim to strike a deal with Pyongyang sometime this year on building a peace park in the demilitarized zone separating the two Koreas. The Unification Ministry made the announcement on Thursday as part of its key policy plans for the year during a joint policy briefing session with President Park Geun-hye. The plan, first proposed by President Park last year, aims to create a peace park marked in yellow in the 4-kilometer-wide buffer border zone. The project was proposed with an aim of improving relations with North Korea. The Ministry for Inter-Korean Affairs also announced plans to push forth a so-called Eurasia Initiative that called for linking energy and logistics infrastructure across the continent. The ministry said it will explore measures to renovate a 54-kilometer track connecting North Korea's port city of Najin and Russia's eastern border town of Hasan. Through the project, Seoul wants to ultimately build a distribution channel that runs from South Korea's southernmost port city of Busan through North Korea and to Russia. Moves for the project have been underway since November, when President Park met with Russian President Vladimir Putin and signed a memorandum of understanding that will help South Korean companies take part in the railway revitalization project. The Unification Ministry also announced it will look into businesses that could enhance cultural understanding between the two Koreas by working in various areas, including sports and arts. The ministry emphasized, however, that it will also dedicate equal efforts to denuclearizing North Korea while trying to improve relations with its northern neighbor. Yurian, Arirang News.
The global defense spending numbers for 2013 are in. The United States has retained its position as the top dog when it came to military spending. And while some countries pumped more money into defense last year, a growing number are actually cutting back. Our Kwon So-ah gives us the latest rundown.
Since 2009, global defense spending has been on the decline, and that trend continued in 2013. In its annual report on military spending, the International Institute for Strategic Studies said the United States stayed firm as the top military spender in the world last year, with a defense budget of over $600 billion. China came in second with a budget of $112 billion, followed by Russia and Saudi Arabia. South Korea ranked 11th at $32 billion. Nearly 60% of European countries have cut down their military budgets with an overall decrease of 2.5%, but Middle Eastern nations went the other way. Saudi Arabia and Oman's military investments have grown by more than 30% over the past 2 years, which was attributed to the recent unrest in the region. Close to home, China, South Korea, and Japan were responsible for more than half of the spending in Asia, which has increased by roughly 12% in 3 years. But one of these things is not like the other. China continues to build up its military might. Its budget for 2014 will rise to $148 billion, and by 2015, analysts say China will be dedicating more money to defense than the United Kingdom, Germany, and France combined. Some analysts even speculate that the gap between China and the U.S. may narrow by the mid to late 2030s. China's military ambitions are reflected on its national TV, where it has been showing off its latest cutting-edge military aircraft, including the homegrown Kunjing 2000, a Chinese airborne early warning and control system. The recent territorial disputes and China's controversial air defense zone are said to be the reasons for the surge in defense spending. This has triggered neighboring countries such as South Korea and Japan to boost their budgets as well. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
Now, at Seoul's National Assembly, it was the first day of a four-day interpellation session this Thursday, where lawmakers took aim at pending political issues, with the candidate nomination system for local elections taking center stage. Arirang News National Assembly correspondent Kim Hyun-ji reports.
On Thursday, lawmakers from the two main rival parties debated over whether to scrap a system in which political parties nominate candidates for local elections, a campaign pledge made by both ruling and opposition presidential candidates in 2012. The main opposition Democratic Party sharply criticized President Park Geun-hye and her cabinet for reneging on a pledge to abolish the system.
President Park has preached that the worst kind of politics is the kind that does not keep its promises to the people, and stressed the theme of trust and principle. Would you consider advising the president to stop ignoring this issue, Mr. Prime Minister?
The ruling party said that getting rid of the candidate nomination system could be unconstitutional, arguing that doing so could interfere with a candidate's right to express their party affiliation and the voters' right to know.
The candidate nomination rights are currently monopolized by some political party leaders. I believe adopting an open primary could be the best way to give the people a chance to nominate candidates.
Both the ruling and opposition party lawmakers demanded an answer on the issue from the government. But the government promptly passed the ball to the National Assembly, saying the matter pertains to the political arena.
Even experts are divided on whether scrapping the political party's candidate nomination system would be unconstitutional. Taking these views into consideration, we would like the parliament to have a thorough discussion on the issue and draw a conclusion.
With all sides refusing to compromise, the debate over the candidate nomination system is largely expected to dominate politics for the rest of the month. The National Assembly will resume the interpellation session next week with a focus on foreign policy, the economy, and culture. Kim Hyun-ji, Arirang News.
Moving on to other stories, a local think tank says the financial jitters surrounding emerging economies are not likely to affect the Korean economy. In its monthly economic assessment released Thursday, the Korea Development Institute said that the impact of falling stock prices and the depreciation of the local currency will be limited, as Korea's economic fundamentals are relatively strong. The institute also said that the Korean economy is on the path to recovery, helped by a modest improvement in domestic demand and growing demand from advanced countries for exports.
Now, smoking is bad for your health. We all know that. But can we hold cigarette makers responsible for all the health hazards? We're about to find that out, because for the first time in Korean history, a public agency is filing a lawsuit against the tobacco industry.
The National Health Insurance Service has started proceedings to sue the nation's cigarette companies, arguing that their cigarette products are pushing medical expenses through the roof. Our Kim Ji-yeon reports.
The National Health Insurance Service, responsible for promoting the public health, says it could be seeking up to $307 million in damages from cigarette companies. The agency says it wants to raise awareness about the dangers of smoking in Korea, emphasizing that smokers are more likely to suffer from a range of serious diseases, including cancer. According to the National Cancer Center, treating those diseases comes at a high cost, especially with the number of cancer patients who are also smokers amounting to 2.4 million over the past 19 years. The NHIS says it plans to focus on cancer patients who suffer from small cell carcinoma to the lungs and squamous cell carcinoma, a type of laryngeal cancer, since the courts have already established that smoking has a direct relationship with these two types of cancer in patients. The NHIS says it costs around $1.6 billion a year as medical expenses to smoking-related illnesses, which comes out of taxpayers' pockets. Smokers currently pay around $2.30 a pack for cigarettes, of which just 33 cents goes to the NHIS. But the agency says cigarette companies do not pay into the NHIS fund. The Korea Tobacco Association, which represents the interests of the nation's major cigarette companies, has criticized the agency for threatening a lawsuit, saying it will induce, quote, unnecessary social conflict and costs. In Korea, there have been cases brought against the tobacco industry, but they've largely been unsuccessful in claiming damages. A class action lawsuit led by a lung cancer patient against the Korean government and KT&G, a major cigarette maker, failed to win an appeal for damages. A similar case filed in 2005 by the family of a police officer who died of lung cancer was equally unsuccessful. A group of 9 people sent a petition to the Constitutional Court in 2012 to repeal a bill that allows the government to participate in the manufacturing, importing, and sales of cigarettes. Kim Jeon, Arirang News.
Well, for a more in-depth look into this tobacco-related lawsuit, we have an expert in the studio, Oh Jae-chang, a multinational litigation attorney and partner at Seoul-based Hemaru law firm.
Mr. Oh, welcome to the program.
Thank you for inviting me here.
Now, first of all, why were success rates brought by alleged victims of cigarette-related illnesses so low here in this country?
Okay, in previous lawsuit, the plaintiff based their claims based on 2 cause of actions. One is negligence, another one is product liability. To meet the elements of product liability and negligence, the plaintiff should establish or prove that the defendant has a duty to warn the smokers, and additionally they had to prove that there was some causal link between the plaintiff injury and the breach of the duty by the defendant. But the court held that plaintiff did not prove that the 2 elements of actions were met. So that's why the claims were all rejected. Okay.
Okay, it seems like we hear all these cases stories about losing battles against tobacco companies. They are a giant that's really hard to tackle. What are some related precedents to this case?
Interestingly enough, there are many interesting precedent cases, especially in the United States. In the past, the ratio of winning the case by the plaintiff was quite low, but over time, the ratio of winning the case and even the amount of claims won by the plaintiff has increased quite a lot. So I think it's quite a significant, and given the kind of increasing rate of winning the case in the States, and in other precedented cases in Germany, even in Japan, there is some tendency that the plaintiff could successfully prove some causal link and even the duty owed by the tobacco company to the potential smokers. So I think it's quite a high time, even the Korean, NHIS tried to file a suit, given that kind of trend.
Now, in this case, in your opinion, who's likely to win? Who has a stronger case?
I think it's really impossible to predict the outcome of the case. But as far as I know, the aim of this suit by the NHIS is not just receive some money. I mean, for their company, but even to raise public awareness regarding the harmful effect to the public. So maybe even considering the kind of potential benefit this lawsuit might bring to the NHIS, maybe the winner might be the NHIS. That's my personal opinion.
Okay, so it's not about money. It's a very noble cause for the nation's health insurance service, and it's not a David versus Goliath battle that we've seen in the past. It's very even Steven right now, but what does the NHIS do? What do they have to do to win this one for sure?
Yeah, as I mentioned, regarding the previous cases, as a plaintiff, they had to prove the sort of legal elements of negligence or product liability. More concretely, they had to meet the requirements of several elements, such as the defendant has a duty to warn the public of harmfulness to the public, the people's health. Another thing is the plaintiff had to establish that there should be, causational link between the personal injury and the breach of duty by the defendant to the plaintiff. That might be the key.
Now, Mr. Oh, if you were the legal representative for the agency, how would you counter the cigarette companies' likely claim that all these smokers have the freedom of choice and that they're not liable for the choices that these people made? Yeah,
that's a great question. I just wanted to mention that in previous cases, especially in the States, your argument, the possible argument which might be raised by the defendant was described as assuming of risk by the potential plaintiff. But in ruling about the case in the United States courts ruled that the sheer defense by relying on the assumption of risk does not dismiss the plaintiff claim. So I think relying on the kind of precedent cases, maybe the plaintiff might overcome the kind of possible defense raised by the defendant.
Well, does the agency have to establish that the company did not do enough adequately to inform consumers of the dangers of smoking? Was there not enough scare tactics by the tobacco companies? Do they have to do that, and how is it going to do that?
Yeah, that's also a really important question. So the key is the plaintiff should show many examples. They need to persuade the judges who are in charge of the case, even logically or even emotionally. Even the warning provided by the defendant right now is not sufficient enough for the public to be aware of the harmfulness to their health. So it's pretty hard, to explain to or persuade the judges in accepting their arguments. But that's the job of the lawyers.
Now, whatever the outcome may be out of this case, it will likely impact the pending cases in Korea, right?
Yeah, surely. Yeah, it's really as far as I know, the NHIS one of the good things they can show more than the other previous plaintiffs did might be they have more reliable statistics. So with the kind of reliable statistics, they can they might overcome the legal barriers. As I mentioned in previous legal suits, the previous plaintiff didn't overcome the causational link and the duty owed by the defendant to the plaintiff. Maybe that might be the key. In the next court hearing, also it will greatly impact on the impending cases.
Certainly, it's not an individual against a large conglomerate, but rather a very organized agency which has the numbers to back things up. So it will be an interesting fight. Mr. Oh Jae-chang, litigation attorney and partner at Hemaru Law Firm, thank you so much for coming in and lighting it up for us.
Okay, thank you for inviting me.
Digging deeper, getting to the bottom of stories that impact your life. Talking with you on air and online. Connecting you with heroes and experts to help you understand the world's most pressing issues. News and current affairs at its best with Moon Gun-young and Daniel Che on Early Edition at 6.
Now shifting gears to the economy, Korean import prices rose by 2.
If you find it hard to pry yourself away from your smartphone while flying, relief is on the way. Starting as early as next month, the Transport Ministry says people flying on Korean airliners, both domestically and internationally, will be allowed to use all portable electronic devices during all stages of flight. This includes laptops, tablet PCs, and smartphones, although phone calls will not be allowed, and the devices will be required to stay in airplane mode. The decision comes after similar moves in the United States and Europe were made.
It was a warm winter day here in Seoul today.
Let's find out if we can expect more of this beautiful weather heading into the weekend with our Michelle Park, who is standing by at the Weather Center. Hello there, Michelle.
Good evening, guys. I'm happy to report that Friday looks to be very similar to today in terms of the temperature and also even warmer in some places. But enjoy it while you can, because by Saturday we're expecting nationwide rain or even snow. Now, going over to the readings, the temperatures are rising really fast. Seoul will start off the morning at -3 degrees and reach 8 in the afternoon. Meanwhile, the southern cities such as Daegu and Busan will peak to 6 and 8 degrees respectively. Now, down on Jeju Island, it's going to be a gloomy with rain day. Daejeon tops out at 7, while Dokdo hits 1, and Mangeumgang tops out at -6. Well, that's all for now. I'm Michelle Park, and back to you guys.
That does it for us. Thank you for watching.
Have a great evening, and we'll see you right back here same time tomorrow. Good night.